This is the Little Moments Count radio podcast, created in partnership with community radio stations throughout Minnesota. Each episode, you'll hear interviews with early childhood experts on how to support the important brain development that takes place in the first 1,000 days of life, just through little moments every day. Learn more at littlemomentscount.org/podcast.
FM 89.9 KMOJ, looking at 49 minutes after the hour. 3 o'clock within the Twin Cities. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And right at this moment, we're going to lock in with Little Moments Count. Now, Little Moments Count is brought to you on every other Tuesday afternoon. And what we talk about is learning about youth and youngsters and educational side of how to help our youngsters to grow. And this episode is brought to you in part with Little Moments Count and Minnesota Public Radio. Little Moments Count is a statewide collaborative focusing on helping parents and caregivers learn about the importance of brain development in the first 3 years of a young one's life. Nearly 80% of the brain growth happens in the first 1,000 days of a small person's interactions when it comes to talking, playing, reading, singing, and the list goes on. And if you like more information, you can always lock in to littlemomentscount.org. And on the phone line, I got none other than Mr. Felix Larbi Appiah. And I'd like to say good early afternoon to you. And how are you doing, sir?
Good afternoon, and I'm doing well. The name is Appiah.
Appiah.
Appiah, yes.
Appiah. And so one of the things is when it comes to that you do, you used to be here in the Twin Cities and in partnership with a young lady named Artika Tyner and doing some stuff when it comes to that side of it. But at this present moment, you are in Ghana. And so give us just a little bit about the temperature and the weather that's going on over that way at this moment.
Yes, it's so hot in Ghana right now. And yes, it's very hot here. I met Artika last year for the first time. Summer last year, I came over. I was on the fellowship at the U of M last year. And I came at Artika was a guest speaker, so we had a little conversation. And I realized the work she does aligns with what I do here. And then we decided to do something together since she also does a lot of work in Ghana. So we decided to partner up and do some great work back home in Ghana. So I would like to say maybe I am the branch of Artika's nonprofits, planting people, growing justice in Ghana, alongside doing other great work, other nonprofit work, and also working with the government as a community development officer. Yes.
So can you give us some insight of that work that you do over that way in Ghana? Because I know it deals with the youngsters and youth and at a very young age. And then also one of the questions is how important and how early should one start when it comes to educational side for one as a youngster or youth?
Okay. So we say that a child's early experiences shape how their brains develop. So the first 1,000 days of a child's life is very, very important. One could ask, like, how does a child's brain work? A child's brain works just by playing, because as a child, they do not work, they do not do much. So a child is supposed to play. That is why we have the fundamental rights of a child being the child's right to play. So as the child plays, and is able to participate, is able to be involved in whatever happens in their community, in their families, the child's brain develops. That is how basically a child's brain is supposed to develop. So a child is supposed to be in an environment where they are able to feel safe. They are in a loving environment. So to create this for a child should have the basic needs to be able to thrive. And what are these basic needs that the child needs to have? The child needs to have clothing, needs to have shelter, needs education, needs food, and then the child needs to be safe. So these are the 5 basic things that the child would need. So we clearly mentioned education here. And education starts from the home. It is not the formal education that we know, taking the child to kindergarten and then going through the formal education, but the love and care that the child receives in the home is one key thing. And For in Ghana, we may say one problem that we face a lot here is parental neglect. And even in the States, whilst I was there, I realized parental neglect was a thing. And when you mention parental neglect, you'd have a lot of people push back at it because they'll tell you, how can you say I neglect my child when I provide food, I provide shelter, I provide education and all that, so I am okay. But then if you are providing education and you are leaving the education in the hands of tutors in the school, that becomes a problem because the tutors do what needs to be done. After the 8 hours, these children come back home and they are supposed to be with their parents. They are supposed to be with family who would continue the process that these teachers have started back in the schools. But then when they come back and there is no mother, there is no father, or even if these two are in the home, but they are not continuing the educational process that the child has already began in the formal institution, there creates a gap. And the gap is what would lead to bridges in the child's development. Thank you.
Now, when we're looking at let's say a caregiver, okay, or we're looking at a guardian, or even parents, for the matter of fact, is that as well. What are some of the signs or some of the symptoms that exist that will let one knows that youngster may be having some issues or some problems or some concerns that where we should look at, that we know that we need to get some more assistance?
Okay, so it's very, very simple sometimes, but it's really hard to catch because when we see these signs, we can just say this child is trying to rebel, this child has joined bad gangs, and they are being influenced by their peers from bad neighborhoods or bad families. But these are some of the signs that we should look out for. We would see a sudden withdrawal. This child would not want to be doing things that all kids will be doing. So you'd find this child indoors most of the times when other kids are outside playing. Then you'd find a sudden quietness. We know there are kids who are quiet by nature, but then if you realize this child was quite talkative, quite, extroverted, and all of a sudden you find the child being quiet, you should know that there should be a trigger. And then conversely, you can also see that a child who everyone might think is normal, growing up as a normal child and all that, becomes excessively aggressive towards everything, and then you'd find them throwing unusual tantrums, the slightest thing, and then it seems like all hell breaks loose with them. That is a challenge. And then you can also spot certain signs like sleep deprivation, or the child sleeping way too much. And then the appetite changes too. So the child loses appetite. They are not so into eating their food, or eating way more than they should. And then we also see that this child loses interest in play. Fundamentally, children love to play. That is all they do. So then if you realize that a child has withdrawn, does not want to play, doesn't want anything to do with anything, you should know that there's a problem going on with the child. And I would like to add one thing, and you'll find regression. Bedwetting, you'd find that a child will start bedwetting, a child will be clingy. They would always want to be next to someone, next to the parents, next to someone they feel they trust and then they can lean on. So these are some of the signs that you can clearly tell. And then when we see these signs, we need not ignore them. Because if we have a child who is going towards one way, a child who is naturally all over the place, extroverted, immediately you see a change in that child. We need to attend to them. And then how can we see that change? We can only see that change if we are playing active roles in the lives of these children, but not just being parents who provide the monetary aspects or just giving them shelter and then not being in their lives, not knowing the day-to-day struggles of our children. We get to miss all these signs.
Ladies and gentlemen, letting you know on the phone line and all the way from Ghana, we're talking to Felix Larbi Appiah.
Yes.
And I'd like to say thank you very much for enlightening the listening audience when it comes to Little Moments Count. And if one would like to get in contact with you or find out more information, and I know you're in Ghana, but at the same time, when it comes to the connections of the universe within itself, there's a lot of ways of getting in contact and in touch with each other. How can one get more informed on what you're doing in your works as well?
Okay, that's fine. You can find me on LinkedIn, Felix Larbi Appiah on LinkedIn. You can also follow my socials on Ya Salem Foundation. That is the non-profit that I run, Ya Salem Foundation. The Ya is spelled Y-A-H, Salem, S-A-L-E-M Foundation. You can follow me. And also, if you get in touch with PPGJ, that's Planting People Growing Justice, down in St. Paul, Minnesota, you'll surely reach me. But then the surest way to reach me is through LinkedIn, Felix Larbi Appiah.
Okay, I want to say thank you very much for the time and the opportunity, and be safe over that way, okay?
All right, thank you too for the opportunity.
No doubt, no doubt. Ladies and gentlemen, letting you know and keeping you in the know, Little Moments Count. And if you like more information, you can always lock in at littlemomentscount.org. It's FM 89.9 KMOJ.
Thanks for listening to the Little Moments Count radio podcast in partnership with community radio stations throughout Minnesota. You can find the Little Moments Count radio podcast wherever you get your podcasts and at littlemomentscount.org/podcast.